Hello?
Hello.
Okay, can we start?
Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. So before I start, please, I appreciate if you can kindly turn off your microphones and cameras. I will briefly introduce myself first. I am Haidar Safa, the chair of the Computer Science Department at the American University of Beirut. I hope that the quality of voice is acceptable. I'm not sure, the internet is very bad. I would like to welcome all of you and salute your spirit for your participation in this special event, which will introduce you to Flutter during this difficult period of time that we are going through. We are at the Computer Science Department at AUB very glad to be part of this event. Alongside with our newly established developer student community. Finally, I will give the floor to Mr. Sayed Ali Al-Kamel from Google Developer Group at Manama, Bahrain, our co-organizer of this special event in this exceptional time. So good luck, everyone, and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haidar. So if Maria can allow me to share my screen.
Okay, I think you can share now.
Yeah, I have the host disabled the participants to share screen. So can you share? Can you see my screen, guys? All right. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session. And so I will start by introducing myself. So my name is Sayed Ali Kamel, and I published my first application probably in 2015. And I've been developing mobile application even before that. And I started with native Android development. I came across different platforms before, and I started even doing iOS natively. And I have one of my, I published probably more than 10 applications by now. And one of my most successful applications has more than 1.8 million downloads, which is a great number for a small country like Bahrain. So as I said, I am also from a co-organizer in GDT Manama, and I'm currently, and at my current job, I'm a native Android developer in my current job, but I still do Flutter on the side. And the last year, actually, I was fully Flutter developer. As you know, as you might heard about it, Flutter is a newly introduced platform. So it was just announced as a stable release in before 1 year ago. And this is where I decided to use Flutter for the projects that we had at my previous job. And we had a lot of great stories, and we had some, let's say, some things that Flutter need to work on. But in general, Flutter is an amazing framework, and we will discuss it today. So the session today, we will cover at the beginning, what is Flutter? And the second part will be about the Flutter basic concepts. And after that, we will start a new project in Flutter, and we will explain how to create a new project and start your Hello World application. After that, we will be explaining something called widgets, and we will explain 10 of these widgets that we will encourage you to use them to create some UIs, and we have some examples and open source projects for you guys to have as a reference. So let's start with what is Flutter. All right, so Flutter was introduced as a Google UI framework. What that means is that it was supposedly to help mobile developers to create a better UIs in their mobile applications. If anyone has an experience with native Android or native iOS, you would notice that it is a little bit hard to have the same UI across all platforms. Usually Android guys have this issue more than the iOS guys because Android devices come from different shapes, different sizes, different ratios, and it was becoming a big problem for us to find a way to solve and find a reactive, let's say, UI that can be that can run smoothly on all devices. So as you can see here, there's two examples of applications were created by Flutter. You can see it's rich with the animation. It has a great, let's say, layout to it, and it can run both on iOS and Android in the same manner, you can say. There will be small changes depending on the native platform, but these changes are expected as we want the application to look more as native as possible. So as I tell you, there's, you can say, two approaches when you start your mobile application project. The first one is to go to the middle, you can say, or create it in the native way. And the second way will be choosing a cross-platform framework to develop your application. There are some good points in both of them, and there are some bad things. So if you say, I would go to the native way and create the mobile applications natively for Android and natively for iOS, you will have a better high quality application with high performance because you will be able to tweak everything that the native code or the native platform can give you. For example, accessing the GPU and things that are related more to performance. But at the same time, you will have to fund for two applications. What that means, you have to have the knowledge. Let's say in Android, you will have to learn Kotlin and or Java, or in iOS, you will have to learn Swift, and you will have two code base that you will need to maintain even for the future. So a good point is not only to publish that application, but even after that application was published and you want to upgrade and add more into it, you will have some problems maintaining two code bases, and you have to be able to maintain them. And the other issue is that you will not have the consistency between two platforms. So because you have different codes, you might have a lot of differences between Android and iOS. I'm just checking the chat. Is my voice clear for you guys? All right, okay. All right, so on the other hand, you have the cross-platform approach. The cross-platform approach gives you one code base, so you don't need to write two codes. You only need one language to write your project. And it is also easy for you to maintain it in the future. If you want to update it, you will have to update only one code, and you don't need to publish it for both platforms. The real issue in the cross-platform approach is that there is a poor in performance. Why is that? Is that because you will have a middleware between the cross-platform, the framework that you are using, and the native code. So if you have ever heard about, let's say, Ionic used something called Cordova to translate the code that you wrote in Angular, in that specific case, into the machine code. So this middleware, or this middle stage that goes code into it, make the performance of your application a little bit slower. And the other point that is really important for mobile developers, that doesn't look like a native application. I have to say that it has been also the cross-platform applications usually work really hard to make it look as native, but still, if someone sees an application, you can easily identify it was done by a hybrid technology or by a native technology. So why Flutter came into the market? The Flutter came in to combine these two approaches and try to find a better solution for both, for mobile developers. So I want the best from the cross-platform world and the best from the native world. And this is exactly what Flutter is providing us. And we will learn how in this stage. So currently how Flutter works is that it is a framework that is based on a language called Dart. And Dart is a Google project that was initially started for server-side, as a language for the server side. But when they introduced Flutter, they decided to make Dart the official language for Flutter. And Dart is really similar to JavaScript. I have heard some information for the internet that actually Dart was meant to replace JavaScript. So anyone who have any simple information or simple knowledge in JavaScript will be able to switch to Dart really easily. To be honest, in my first time I started working with Dart, I didn't even read the Dart documentation. I was able to figure it out by just looking at the code. It's that simple, in my opinion. Some of you will still need to go through the documentation, but that is totally fine. So what we are seeing here is that how the framework is actually layered, and it's more into details. I just want to share with that information. And this is how the engine and the back is running on C++. There are some let's say layers here on Dart and etc. for mobile applications. So these layers we can't actually access. What we can access is within these layers. We will talk about material and Kubernetes and all these stuff in later slides. I just want to give you an overview on how the frameworks actually look in the background. The second part of the slide, which is the one that is important, as I tell you, Flutter also gives you the ability to, let's say, if the Flutter framework doesn't support any kind of functionality at the moment, and that you need that functionality in your project. Flutter don't give you the limitation of the framework itself and allows you to access the iOS project or the Android native project and do that functionality and link it to your Flutter application. So the way that it does that is that when you create a Flutter application, you will be in this place on the screen, and you will have access. You will have two actual projects for iOS, which can be run by Xcode if you have a Mac, and you will have another project for Android, which you can run it on Android Studio as a native Android application, and you can access it, add your functionality there, and create something called a method channel, where you can access from your Flutter application that method and call it and do whatever functionality you are planning to do. So this is actually was the main reason why I started developing on Flutter, because I don't want to be limited by what the framework can give me. For example, if I use Ionic, I want to access some, let's say, GPS information, which can be accessed, but let's say at the moment Ionic cannot support that. I will be limited by that. I will not be able to finish the project unless I went through and try to find a creative solution. But using Flutter, I will have that ability. I will not be limited by the framework, and which is also a really good point. So three main points that Flutter, let's say, beats all other frameworks in, which is high velocity development, expressive toolkit, and the native app and iOS and Android applications. We will go through them now in more details. So what do we mean by high velocity development? One of the best, let's say, tools that Flutter provide us to be able to create mobile applications really quickly and really fast, something called the hot reload. In the picture or the short video that you are seeing right now, when you do any changes in the code, it will reflect directly in the emulator or whatever device you are using to show that. We will demonstrate that in a bit, but this is just to introduce you to Flutter. Another thing, and this is something that I personally had before I even saw other developers saying that, is that I noticed that, and when I develop something on Flutter that takes me, let's say, 1 hour to develop, I will need 3 hours, for example, in Android to develop the same thing. And in Flutter, I will have it for both Android and iOS. So it was a good idea for me to switch to Flutter at that point, because it will save me some time, and also it will give me these features for hot reload, which reduces the time I need to build the project. Sometimes it takes me around 10-15 minutes to build some project when the project becomes really big. Here I have it in a matter of seconds, which saves a lot of time for me, which is faster for developers. It's like a great feature for us. Another let's say, strength point for Flutter is that you are able to control every pixel on the screen. So you have this ability, you can say, in native Android, but that ability is not, it's still defined by the Android toolkit. For us in Flutter here, we don't have to be connected, or in terms of UI, we don't need to be limited by the Android or iOS toolkit, and we can express all our designs that we want to implement through the Flutter framework. I want to say a really good point here, that mobile applications are usually, let's say, marked or rated by their design more than the backend or the code performance behind it. So a design on the UI of your application is more important for the users than how your backend is actually working. Because this is the first thing that the users will be able to interact with, and it's the only thing that the user will be able to judge on it. They cannot see your backend code, they cannot see how their APIs are called or anything. Yeah, so one of the things also that happens all the time, that designers usually design for iOS devices and in a big projects, and usually when they ask the developers, can you design the screen, they will usually say, sometimes at some points they will say, no, we cannot, because of the limitation of the native platform. So it's a good point to say that if you are using Flutter, you will not say no to the designer, which is a really good thing for designers, I guess. And yeah, so how does Flutter achieve the native look and feel for in your mobile applications? The way that it does that is that if you have heard about Linux and you heard about rendering engines that they are using, you might came across OpenGL or DirectX on Windows. These are usually a common rendering engine that's been used by major OS used by the world. And as you know, Android is based on Linux, so it's using OpenGL. But the problem is that OpenGL was not developed directly for mobile application. So what Flutter did was they developed their own rendering engine, and that engine is shipped within the application you are building and within the application you are publishing. This way, this rendering engine is focused on mobile application, which can provide you major features that cannot be provided by OpenGL. For example, I haven't heard about this before, but this feature was introduced by Flutter, a 60 FPS mobile application. So 60 FPS means 60 frames per second, and which is a really high frame per second for a mobile application. These terms are usually used by game developers to play games in more, let's say, details way. And it's also, so what the rendering engine here also does is that it converts the Dart code that you have directly into machine code, So you will skip the middleware that we were talking about in, let's say, Cordova and Ionic or other frameworks. So this way we will have a native application directly, it compiles and runs directly into the GPU and CPU of your device. And you will have all the possibilities that without any limitation that you used to have on other cross-platform functionalities. All right, so one of the biggest questions that people ask me that does Flutter is going to be something that will end really soon, or something like a side project for Google that they will not care about in the future? I would say the answer for that is that Google is pushing big companies and big names to use Flutter as their main language or the main development framework for their mobile applications. And one of these big companies is Alibaba. I guess most of you have heard about Alibaba or AliExpress. They published a new application for a new service in China using Flutter. Another big name in this list is Square. Square is one of the top fintech businesses in America right now, and they are providing solutions for PLC solutions for, let's say, a shop that wants to, you want to buy something and you need to have this receipt and calculate all the financial of the place. So Square provided through an iPad or through a mobile phone with a small plugin that you can swipe your card with it. It's a really interesting part, and they are working with Google to integrate Flutter into their mobile applications, which shows us that even that Flutter and Google are pushing towards big companies to use their Flutter programs, and these companies will not be close really soon, as it's shown right now. But so they will be dependent on Flutter and maintaining Flutter. Another big point also I need to mention that Flutter is an open source project. So anyone can open and access Flutter framework and edit on it if they want. So yeah, this is also a big point for Flutter. All right, so these are an example of applications. Alibaba is on the left. You can see that these are all developed by using Flutter and AdWords. And there are some talks also that the new Google Stadia, if you heard about it, will be developed on Flutter. So one of the things also that we have been hearing about is that Hamilton application was developed also using Flutter. And this is also a quote from the co-founder of Hamilton, that within 3 months of them writing their first line of code, they were able to publish their application, which is a really encouraging part that Flutter is really easy, and they were able to develop that application within 3 months. All right. So another big point for Flutter is that it works with most of the tools and platforms used by mobile developers. So one of them is Android Studio, Xcode, if you heard about it, and Visual Studio Code. And also one of the things that really work well with Flutter is Firebase. If you haven't heard about it, it's a backend as a service. So rather than you creating all your database and APIs and all these things, Firebase take care of it. So I think it's a good recipe to have Firebase with Flutter and complete an application really quickly and have it done in a really nice way. Also, it also supports some third-party Android SDKs that is used natively, and iOS SDKs also used natively by developers in both platforms. It also supports material design. Material design, if you haven't heard about it, it's a philosophy of Google to create designs. And material design was introduced in 2014. And probably if you have used any of Google products before that date, you would see that all of them were in a different design. They decided to unify that design and created a philosophy or a guidelines for people to use material design in the future, and all their products that after that date were following material design. Right. So one of the good things also, and these numbers are updated. I just don't have the latest number, but you have a lot of packages, a lot of plugins that you can use in for Flutter. You have a lot of GitHubs, repositories, and you have a lot of apps that are now launched in Flutter, and you have a lot of support from the community. And it is not as big as, let's say, Java that's been there for many years, but during this 1 year or 1 year and couple of months, we can see there is a lot of community started for Flutter, and they will find a lot of support for Flutter when you search for it. All right, so how do you use Flutter? So there are 4 types, 4 ways you can use Flutter at the moment. You can start an app from scratch, or you can start prototyping a new idea. It will be very helpful for you. You can also add, let's say you have an Android application, but you don't have an iOS yet. You can also add support for different platforms really easily using Flutter. Or you have an existing Android project, and what you can do is that add some pages or part of it in Flutter, which is also going to help you reduce the time needed to recreate the whole application. All right, so key components, as I said, Firebase, as you can see on the left, Firebase is one of the biggest platforms that works perfectly with Flutter. And also material design is also implemented heavily in Flutter, with also a lot of support from GCP. So the whole Google ecosystem works really well with Flutter. So if you are into that, it will be really helpful for you to create the full solution, not only a mobile application, but a mobile application with backend and with all the necessary tools that you need. So we have, I think if anyone has a question, I have a couple of minutes for question for that part that we had before. Okay, so Hardy is asking, what is the main advantage of Flutter over React Native? To be honest, there is a lot of similarities between React Native and Flutter, and the way that it deals with mobile application reactiveness and everything. However, React Native is built by Facebook. So if you are into that ecosystem, in the Facebook ecosystem, it will be helpful for you to use React Native. But if you are more into, let's say, Firebase on all the services that Google would offer, I would say Flutter would be better for you. It's interesting also, React Native is the language or the framework used for Instagram and Facebook, so it is really good. And also I want to add one point here. Also, Flutter is developed, you can say, for designers. And because of that, you can have a lot of tools for designing your application easily. And it will be really helpful for you to create beautiful designs really quick and really easily. So it's a nice approach for that. And also React Native was, at the beginning, React Native was built for web as a React framework. And the way that Flutter approached this framework was they built it first for mobile, and now they are expanding to web and other platforms. So it's a mobile first framework. All right, so you want me to go back to the slide where Flutter works. Yes, AT, can you Let me know what is your question. Oh, okay. So you are looking for these slides. So guys, don't be limited by these slides. In the Flutter anniversary that it was a big event that celebrates 1 year of Flutter. They introduced a designer who used Flutter to create creative designs using the framework that is actually built for mobile applications. So he ignored everything that Flutter did for as a toolkit for mobile application and created his own toolkit to create creative designs with it. So we'll try to share with you the link later so you can see that. So don't be limited by what's written in this slide. This is just something as a personal opinion. You can say how to use Flutter. Flutter is also used for web applications, but it is still in beta. So I try not to, personally not to use something in beta until it is in a stable release. Okay, which platform or tool you advise to use with Flutter? Can you elaborate more on this question? So there is for backend, you can use Firebase, for example, or do you mean the IDEs? Okay, I think the questions are getting to, people are asking at the same time. So I'm having a hard time to follow. So can we continue on the workshop and keep the long questions later on and maybe have the mic open for each one who have a question? That would be easier for us to manage the questions. We will continue on the slides right now. Keep your questions in mind. We'll ask you later for them. All right, so let's go through the basics. So the first thing here is that as I told you, Flutter is a new framework that uses something called a declarative UI, a style of development. And this style allows you to describe what are you going to see on the app rather than define it and constructing it using the original way that's been used in Android and iOS. You construct it and then you define or set by setters and getters and set the values that you want. And by describing what you want to see in your screen, you are actually allowing the Flutter framework to adjust and let's say adapt with whatever device that the app is running on to show you the best design possible. So to give you a quick example on this, I have here on the left a screen which has an A, B, and inside it some views. So usually when you are using, for say, Android, you will just construct that in XML and then go back into, let's say, Java or Kotlin and define like B is text view and .set color, .clear children, and all of these information. If you guys are just beginners and you don't have experience with Android, you can just don't give a lot of attention to this, but Android developers or other platforms who are using the same style of imperative style you can relate you can relate to this. So how is Flutter is different? It's using a declarative style, and this is how it looks. So for example, you have view B, and you have it in the return. Inside of it, you just decide to give it a property, which is color and red, and you give it another property for child and another view, let's say view C. So you are not defining and you are not constructing your UI, you are just declaring it, okay, I want you to show me this view at this point, at this place, let's say 200 pixels for the right, and or on the left of the screen, you have to show me this kind of, let's say, component here, and allow the framework itself to figure how it can show it on the device that is running right now. All right, so let's get into what every video you probably will see about Flutter on YouTube are talking about, that everything in Android and Flutter is a widget. And the question is, what is a widget? So I can describe it by showing you this picture. If you have played this game when you're running, we call this game Mukaabat. I'm not sure what you call it, probably Lego or something. And you have these kind of cubes or building blocks that you can put together and create beautiful designs, or at least something. And these blocks, you can compare it to widgets and Flutter. So widgets are the building blocks of your mobile application, and you can put them together to create the beautiful applications. And the problem is they don't look like this. They look something like this. As you can see, the first thing that you will see that it's you can define the name of the widget that you are going to display. In this example, container. After that, you have two brackets. Inside of it, you will have the parameter, which is child. This parameter, depending on the parameter, you can have values here or another widget here. For example, a parameter called color will have a value of a color, and a parameter of a child can have any kind of widget, another widget. And this is another example for a widget, text, and two brackets with the string here. And this is how you can see and view the widget here and the code, and it will reflect directly into the application when you run it. So it will be more clear how to use the widgets when we start and run our first application. I'm just explaining each code, what does it mean. So the widgets are in two main types. The first one is the collections, and these are SDKs and libraries from the Flutter framework that are available for you, predefined widgets available for you to use them in your app. And we have two main libraries for that, the Material SDK and the Kubernetes SDK, which is Kubernetes refers to the iOS style. So if you want to create an application that looks exactly same as the same as an iOS app, you can use the Kubernetes library. In this workshop, we will focus more on the material library and material components, material widgets. So these are the type of components that you have. And you can also create a custom component or custom widget for you. And they have two types of custom components, stateful and stateless widgets. The difference between them are that stateless widgets are widgets that will not change during the lifetime of the application. So let's say you have a page that you're displaying and a text that will never change during the lifetime of the application. You will open application and close it. The text will stay the same. Let's say it has the app name. That will never change. Or the stateful widget will have a change in its state during the lifetime of the application. So let's say you are connecting this page with, let's say, Firebase, and at some point of time, a user will click a button, and the text values at that point will change. So at that point, you will use stateful widgets. At the moment, most of your work probably will be in stateless widgets. But it's good to know about the stateful. Maybe in future more advanced work, you will probably need to do that. So let's go back to, So going back to this collection. So this collection are ready-made, as I said, ready-made widgets. And where we can find them is within the Flutter website. You can find a description about every widget and some pictures and videos and possible parameters that they give you. And you can scroll in it and search for widgets within it. So you can, let's say you want to create an image, you will go through here and they will show you an example code, for example, how to use it, and you can learn from that. All right, so how to create your own widget. This is also just to give you an idea. So if you saw it in your code, you'll be able to understand it. So the first thing that you will do is that to write class, and then you will define the name of the widget. In this case, my new widget. You can write whatever name that you would like. And then you will extend it to the type of the widget. So in this case, it's a stateless widget. Inside of the brackets, you will be having this override for a build function, which will return whatever the function, the widget itself returns. So this is an example of a page. So as I told you, everything is a widget. And if you want to create a page, you will probably need to create a custom widget like this. And you will return here, let's say, text or whatever widgets that we will learn in the next slides. And yeah, so this is an example of a stateless widget. We will cover also stateful widgets. As you can see at the first line, it is pretty much similar to the stateful widget. However, you have two components to complete a one widget in stateful. You have the actual stateful widget, and the second component will be the state itself. And the state starting point is the same class and define the name of the widget, the same way with the state. However, the difference is after the extents. So you here will describe the state, and then you will give it the type of widget that you are going to use, or the state for. And this part also, which is the build part, is similar to the part in the stateless widget. The main difference is here, where you have to connect the state itself with the widget. So to be honest, while developing with Flutter, there are many plugins that can actually create the widget for you. So you don't need to memorize everything. You can use these toolkits and plugins to complete your code with this part. And also, if you created the class and give it a name and extend, let's say, stateful widget, and created the brackets, the IDE by itself, in most cases, will give you an error here. You right-click on it, and it will implement the methods necessary for it. And that's just to give you an idea how it works and what's in every line in the code. All right. So two important terminal commands that will be useful for Flutter developers. The first one is Flutter Doctor. It's used in the CMD or terminal, depending on your OS. If you install it correctly, you run this command, and it will show you if any of the components of Flutter is not installed properly, or it's missing, or it needs some sort of agreements that you need to agree to. And that's actually help you. It helps a lot to troubleshoot any problems that you have in installation of Flutter. And even in the future, you might need to upgrade or do anything with that. Another really good practice also to use Flutter in the terminal. However, you can depend also on your IDE that provides you a button for the run. And I need to mention a point here. Flutter is not also, you can also use Flutter without an IDE using all command lines. And probably it will be a little bit hard for beginners to use, let's say, Notepad to edit the code. However, it is really helpful for people who want to add DevOps integrations and pipelines into the development of your applications. So there are two main concepts there: continuous integration and continuous development, deployment, and that will help them very well to work with DevOps. And I will not cover that in this session, but just to give you an idea how powerful is Flutter with actually with DevOps also. All right, so another thing would be the pubspec.yaml. It's a file in your project that you will see that define the name of your application or the project and the description of it. And in that file, you will be including any kind of SDKs or libraries that you want to add to your project. For example, in this example, you have Firebase_authentication, which is Firebase authentication SDK with the number of the SDK. I want to mention things about this file, that this file is sensitive to spaces. So if you have a extra space somewhere, the file might not work. We'll show it more in the demo. I just want to mention it here. And after making any changes in pubspec.yaml, it's a good practice to run Flutter packages git, which will bring you or download all the packages, the new packages or dependencies that you define in that file. And also we have a good command that, let's say you want to upgrade your packages, you just need to run this command, Flutter packages upgrade, and your packages will be up to date. All right, so I think there are some questions. So before we start, let's answer them. Can you please open the mic, Marwan, and when I run Flutter question that not everything is installed, is that normal? Yes, it is normal that everything is not installed, but the important thing is that Android Studio and Flutter is installed correctly. And probably the emulator also need to be installed, or you can run it also on your physical device. All right, so I think we can start showing the demo. So I will start Android Studio. So let me just start it as a beginning. And let's start a new project with you guys so we can see everything. All right. So for example, if you installed everything in your device, just give me a minute. All right. So if you installed everything correctly, what you will have here is that you will have a new option in Android Studio, start a new Flutter project. So we will click on it. You will have these options: Flutter application, plugin, etc. For us, and this workshop, we will covering Flutter application. You will define the name of the application that you want to do. Let's say Flutter app 2, let's say, or 3. And you will define where you want. You will define also the SDK of that, of the path of the Flutter SDK. So usually, if you have it already defined before, it will prompt you there. And you can define also the project location. So let me just put it in my desktop. So we have it in my desktop. And you have a small description for you in the future to know which project is this. And click next. Here you have to define the package name. So what is the package name for Android developers? In Android native code, you have a package name which is a unique name that will be used for you to identify your application in the Play Store and in other services like Firebase. So this code has to be a unique code. And if you are not publishing your project, you shouldn't care about it. But if you are, you need to make it as unique as possible. And it's also going to be the same thing for iOS for the bundle ID. So we have to make it unique if you are publishing the project. And let's click finish. Yeah, so sometimes it takes some time to create the project. Yeah, yeah. So if this is the first time you are opening Android Studio, I just want to take you around and see what's available here. So at the left side, you can see it's written here, project. Here where you can see your actual project, you can change how you can view your project from here. And for Flutter, you just keep it on project. And you have tools underneath where you can see the logcat, which is really important to see any kind of issues, what's running on my device right now. And you can choose debug here to see the debugs or errors to see if there is a problem. And that's actually when you run the application. Right now it's showing my emulator is connected, so it's showing some random errors. And you have here the terminal where you can run some commands. You can run Flutter Doctor, for example. So you don't need to open the CMD again. So underneath also there is some dot analysis to analyze your code and everything. And you have a to-do view. For this one, I use it a lot, which is a functionality that you can add, let's say, a to-do comment, where you can ask it and you can refer back to it when you want to do something here in the code, so you don't forget it. All right, so let's go also, and on the top side, you will have here what is connected to your phone or to your Android Studio. So currently it's showing my physical phone, which is connected, and also it's showing me my IDE, which is also connected on my other screen. To run an IDE, you need to run an emulator. You need to go through the emulator tab. I don't know if you can see where I'm going to click right now, and it will pop you up with a list of virtual devices if you have one. If you don't, you will just go through create virtual device and choose whatever options you want. You can choose from pixel. You can add your own dimensions and create your own phones. Just click next, and you can create it. If it's your first time, you will probably need to download Android OS in a pure form so that it will be run on the emulator. So after you have that, you will only have to choose one. For example, use this one and click run, and it will run for you. After it runs, it will look like that. The process takes some time. That's why I have it run before. So yeah. And on the right side also, you have also your Sdk Manager. So you can see the versions of Android that is installed here. And these are basic stuff in Android Studio. So let's come back to our main topic today, which is Flutter. So right now, what you see here is the Flutter project. Inside of it, you will see Android and iOS projects that we talked about earlier. If you open that, and if you have any experience with Android, you will see the same Gradle, the same Kotlin code here that we would use in the main activity, for example, in the Android native development. And also you can see also iOS, you can see the Xcode project, and you can open it on Xcode if you have a Mac. Currently I'm running on Windows, so I cannot run for you guys. And you have also the lib folder where everything that you will do related to Flutter will be here, which is in the main.dart file. We'll come back to it. And also we will have, you can locate it, you can locate the pubspec.yaml in the main folder of the project here. So this is how it looks like. And it has a lot of comments, and it has a lot of advices where to use things. For example, if you want to add an asset, you need to define the asset path in the pubspec.yaml, and it gives you an example of a code here. And anything that you will need to bring into the project, let's say fonts, let's say anything extra not into the project, you will probably go through the pubspec.yaml. Once you change it, you can run packages.get. Flutter, actually, Android Studio gives you the option to run it by clicking on this button, or you can run it through the terminal by writing flutter pub-get or flutter packages.get. All right, and so let's return back to our Flutter project. So inside the lib, inside main.dart, what you will find at the first line is void main and run app. This line is actually the first line that will run when you launch your application. And it's, if you haven't seen this kind of, let's say, development or this kind of Lambda function, it's the equivalent of having it like this. And just running a function called run app, and it's calling a stateless widget that, so when we created the first project, we have actually some example code shipped within the project. So let's run that and see how it looks. So I make sure that I chose my emulator here. I'm choosing also main.dart. It will choose you for you automatically. And I just clicked on the green run button, and let's see how it looks. So basically the code here will be a counter app, a simple counter app, which has a floating action button on the right of the screen, and a counter. When you click on that, it will show you how much did you count it. So you can see also, and at the bottom, at what stage the running of the application is in. So currently, right now, it is running for Android emulator. So it is in something called the cradle task, which is something related to Android. And here we go. So this is our application that was shipped from Flutter as an example. And so let's do some changes. And let me just delete some comments to make it obvious for you guys. I can see in the comments that someone is requesting Visual Studio Code. Would you guys be interested in that? Okay, leave comments and we'll see after we finish from Android Studio. It's basically the same thing. The only differences in the IDE, the same code, the same terminal, let's say, commands, and nothing big in Visual Studio Code as a difference. But if a good amount of people want that, we can demonstrate that today. All right, so right now here, what we have here is our first, let's say, custom widget. We called it here, they call it for us, my app. It's a stateless widget. And inside the build, we have what's called a widget. We will not cover it now, we'll cover it after finishing some slides, but I want to just show you here. So let's demonstrate changing the hot reload. So right now here, the color is blue, which is the main color. Let's change it to red, for example. And if I click save, it will directly reflect on my emulator here. So you can see how it looks and you can play around with it. So let's say you have pushed the button this many times. Let's change it to, let's say this is your counter. And if I click on Control S to save, it will directly change in my project. So yeah, I think it's a cool feature for developers. So let's come back to our slides and explain the widgets themselves that we'll be using today and give you an example on them. So we have 10 Flutter widgets that we want to explain today. The first one, and using that 10 Flutter widgets, we were able to create something similar to this design. And I have this design available in my GitHub account. So if you guys want to have a look how I used these 10 widgets that I'm going to explain in a bit to create that kind of designs. And so the first one, which is the material app widget. I don't know if you have noticed, but it was there in the code, the example code. So what this widget does is that it gives you, it defines the type of application that you are going to use. And it will be called or defined in the beginning of your page or your whole project. And it will say that you are going to follow the material design widgets and the material design concepts in this application. So how to write that? You will just write the name of the widget, material app. After that, you will write 2 brackets. Between them, you will have a space or an enter. And inside of it, you will have what they call it as a property. And the value of the property can call a different widget, or you can put your main widgets here. However, calling a different widget is a better idea. Because you will not only show one widget, which this parameter only takes one widget. So this is actually how you call a different widget, a different custom widget. So let's say you have a widget called new widget name, and you just call it with 2 brackets. You can also define some parameters here and pass them if you want. You're not limited also to home as a parameter. You have also a title parameter and a theme, which is actually what we changed in a bit. So the theme parameter and material apps give you the ability to define a theme that can be used across your application and give it, and you can give it a unified color, let's say a primary color, which is blue or black or whatever. And by default, it will be blue. And by doing that, you are giving the whole project a sense of structure that you don't need to define every color. If you want to change it in the future, you can only change it in one place. You don't need to go around and change every color everywhere. And yeah, and that was our first widget. The second widget will be Scaffold. So Scaffold is kind of a widget that is, the main purpose of it is to structure your app. So what you have here as an example, what the Scaffold does is that it gives you the ability to add app bar, a place to add app bar, a place to add your content, a place to add it in the bottom, and a place to add it on, add a drawer on the right or the left. I can give you an example on how the Scaffold works with this type of, let's say, drawers that you would see in the grocery markets and supermarkets. Its main purpose is to organize what's going to be displayed, and it gives you an organized way to display your products in the case of a grocery, and in the case of a Flutter application, you are organizing the widgets that you are going to display. All right. So how do you write it? Just write Scaffold and 2 brackets, and you have a lot of parameters. One of them is app bar, to have the app bar on the top. You have the body also to have the content inside, and it has also some parameters that can be defined. For example, background color, to change the background color of your content in your application and the body in your page. And this would be the Scaffold. And we'll go now to the app bar, which will be, the app bar is actually implemented inside of the Scaffold. So as you can see here, the parameter app bar, except app bar here. So the app bar, if you, I probably have seen this a lot in all applications mostly. And it's at the top bar here where you can display a title or subtitle or even an image. And you can have something, action or a button or an icon on the left and icons on the right. So to write that code or that widget, you will just need to add write app bar with a capital letter and brackets, and you have a parameter for the title where you can give it a text widget or an image, and the leading, which will be the things on the left in this case, and actions, which will be on the right of the title. However, they didn't call it left and right, I guess, because if you have if you have an application in Arabic, or you want to switch your application to Arabic, you don't want to be the left side will be on the right and the right side will be at the left. So they just name it leading and actions. Actions actually can take more than one widget. So if you want to have more than one button, you can add them within the actions parameter. All right, so the fourth widget for us today will be the text. You need a way to display text on your screen, so you will need a widget which called text. You give it a string here, and after that you can write a comma, and you have a lot of other options that you can implement. One of them, and most important one, is style. And then after style, you can provide it with something called a text style, where you can change the bold, the font weight, and the color of the font, and everything that's related to how the text will display the message here. All right, so the fifth widget for today is the container. I guess there is a lot of web developers with us today, and I can compare the container with div in HTML. It has the purpose of having an empty component or empty widget that you can use it to rearrange some styles and rearrange and add something to it to display it. So let's say you have a widget, a container here, and you have a child widget within it that displays a text, and you want to define some space between that container and the text itself. That will be defined by the container itself within the application, so that it can show you the information in a better way. It's a good widget to be used whenever you can you have some problems with alignments or anything like that, so that you can align all your code together. To write this container or to write this widget, you will just write the container as the name of the widget, and inside the brackets you have width, height, children. You have also padding and other parameters. You can find all these parameters within the Flutter website, also, so that it can help you if you want to know what are your options. So the sixth widget will be how to related to how we can display the layout of our application. So this widget is a column that will allow you to add a list of widgets within that widget and display it in a column manner. And to define that, it's the same. You just write column. However, it has an option which is children. Children accept more than one widget, and to do that, you will have to have some sort of an array here. And inside the array, you can put whatever widgets you want to display, and to separate between them, you just need to add a comma. All right, and two main parameters within the column page are main axis alignment and cross axis alignment. So let's say you have your own widget created, and you want to align the children of your widget in, let's say you want to align them space evenly, that they have all an even space between them. So what you will do is that you will add the main axis alignment, and you can notice here there is a pattern where the parameter of the widget accepts the same, let's say, value with the same name. It's just that the first letter is capital, and the parameter name has a small case. So the main axis alignment, and after that, after writing that dot, you will have different options. You'll have space evenly as one of the options. So main axis alignment in the column will be the main axis, which is the vertical axis in this case. And the cross axis alignment will be the opposite axis. So in column, it will not be the vertical, it will be the horizontal. So you can actually also change the value of the cross-axis element. So let's say in this case, you wanted to have it in the start. So all the components will be on the left side of the screen or of the column. All right, so the seventh widget we have today is the row. Row is similar to column, however, in the opposite axis. And here the main axis is the horizontal axis, and the cross axis is actually the vertical one. And it has the same way you have to define children, and inside of it, you will have you can put all of your widgets inside. So our eighth widget will be images and how to display images in Flutter. So this is the basic way. Okay, so this is the basic way to present an image. You have also an image and two brackets. However, I don't prefer to use this way. The Flutter team have provided us with an amazing way to display images, which is a little bit different. It will look like this. So you just write image dot and you decide where the source of that image will be. Is it going from network, it's coming from network, or from an asset that you define in your project? So you just write .network, and inside of that you will put your URL for the image, and or the other way around, the assets, and you will put it in path. Keep in mind, if you are adding an image into your project, you need to add the path also in pubspec.yaml, and run packages get to receive that. So our ninth widget, which is material button, it's the basic or the pure or the raw button that is used within the material library of Flutter. And it has no design. It gives you the ability to design the button any way that you want. And it has a child. The child can accept the text that will be displayed or any kind of widget. It has a parameter called onPressed, which will contain the logic that will be used. For example, if you press on that, do some calculation here. And it has an interesting parameter, which is shape, where you can give it different types of widgets to shape it. And yeah, so material button also have, let's say, 3 children or 3 different types that extend from the material button style with predefined styles. So flat button, it will give you a flat style of a button, and it will work the same way that you will do a material button, and rather than writing material button, you will write just flat button. And outline button will be something similar with a button with a border. Or we can use also a raised button, which will look something like the button will be a little bit raised from the screen itself. And the last widget, the 10th widget, would be the icons. Icons are actually handled really in a good way in Flutter, to be, in my opinion. And there is a widget for icons where you can write icon, and inside of it you can give it this kind of an icon in this kind of way, icons dot, and you can decide whatever icon you can give it. This might look like it's going to be complicated to know what kind of style of icon or how your icon in your mind looks like, but what you can do in your IDE, so this is an image from a Visual Studio Code IDE. After you write icons dot, you can see that there is a long list of icons, and actually when you hover on one of them, you can see how the icon looks. Me as an Android developer or mobile app developer, I can say that I have wasted a lot of time looking for nice looking icons and free ones in the internet, and it's hard to have a unified icons if you are going that way. So this widget actually helped me a lot with speeding up my development, because I don't need to care about looking for icons anymore. All right, so we have the 10 widgets, and I think you have a lot of questions, guys. So let's have a quick session of Q&A before we continue, and see if you have any questions. So feel free to open the mic and ask any questions.
Hello, sir.
Hello. Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Just if you don't mind, can you show us in the Visual Studio Code, because as I noticed that the Android Studio is too heavy, you know?
The sound is a little bit breaking, but you want me to show you how to create a project in Visual Studio Code? Is that correct?
Yes, right, yeah. Yes,
All
right.
right. All right. So
If you don't mind, sir.
yeah, it's okay. So let me start Visual Studio Code. All right. All right, so I have Visual Studio Code in front of me, and I hope I have Flutter installed here. I'm not sure. So let me just check if I have Flutter installed. Oh, I think I will need to. All right, so what I'm going to do here, okay. So I have it installed, but it's not the latest one, so I hope it will work. And so to start a project, a Flutter project in Visual Studio Code, you will go to View, Command Palette, and then write Flutter. And you will see here a new project. And then you will decide the name of the project. Let's say here, Visual Studio Code Demo. And you will then be prompted where you want to save your project. I will save it in desktop. And you can see that the project is being created, and you can see prompt with the files that are getting created here. All right, so we have our project, and you can see the same exact thing. Android here, iOS is here, lib is here also, and your pub/spec YAML. And if I went through my main project here, I can see the same example code that I had in Android Studio. To run it on an emulator, you actually have to go through Android Studio first and then run the emulator there. And then you will find the list of emulators in your project. So when I click on the right side, you can see that I'm connected to one device, which is this device right now. And I'm going to run this code. To be able to run it, there is two ways that I know about. The first way, we'll have to go to debug and run a debug. And it should prompt me with. So right now can see I have this kind of tooltip where I can do a hot reload and restart. I'm just going to wait for it to load. So yeah, I have the project running here. And as you can see, we have everything I want or I need here. And if I change, let me do the exact same changes here. Let me just go, for example, to, what did we do there? Change it from blue. Is someone is circling here? All right, so have red. And if I save that, it will directly do it, or we can do the hot reload from here. All right, so I think this will answer your question. And I think there is a different question. Yeah, so if you want to think about it, which IDE would you use, Visual Studio Code or Android Studio? It's actually what one of the most was correct. It's a matter of preferences. However, in the latest Android event, Flutter Interact, they introduced some plugins for Android Studio that before Visual Studio Code. That's why sometimes I prefer to use Visual Studio Code. And also, I'm used to it as I used to be an Android developer, so it's more familiar for me. However, in some of my laptops, I actually use Visual Studio Code because it's lighter and it's allowed me to do more development without freezing. It's a well-known issue that Android Studio is heavy on your device. So if your device is suffering with Android Studio, feel free to switch to Visual Studio Code. However, don't delete Android Studio because you still need it for the SDK. All right, let's open the mic for any other questions. Please ask them through the mic because in the chat, it's hard for me to follow up all the questions.
So in both cases, we need to install Android Studio?
Yes, in both cases, you need that. Unless you find a way to download Android SDKs without Android Studio. Currently, from my knowledge, you can't do that separately. You have to download it on Android Studio.
If we are running on Mac, Xcode would work fine?
If you are going to run it on an iPhone, yes. Or an iPhone emulator, yes.
Okay.
But it's either you have an Android on iOS so that you can run it on which platform.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Just a quick question. The extensions we need in Visual Studio Code are Flutter and Dart. That's it?
Yeah. Yes, you can add also some more extensions. Probably I have some of them installed here. Let me just look at what I have. So I have things like prettier or to make the code look pretty and have some awesome snippets just to complete my code. So you don't require them, you only need Flutter and Dart. But if you want to find some, if you want to make some, find some useful extensions that might help you with your development, feel free to download them.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions?
الو
Hello.
تسمعني؟
Hey.
لو سمحت عندي السؤال بس إذا مثلا بسوي application بس إنه أبي أعرف أي فريم ورك أستخدم يعني فلاتر يصير على كل شيء حق كل شيء يعني حتى الابلكيشن الهارد يعني اللي صعبة شوي.
You're asking if the question if Flutter works on with hard projects or hard platforms.
يعني
Okay.
يعني أبى أعرف أي واحد أستخدم أي فريم ورك حق أي بروجكت كذي.
Okay. So okay. So for Flutter, I can say you can use it for almost 80% or 90% of the projects. However, if your project is going to be something that uses a lot of, let's say, the core components of Android or iOS, let's say you are working on a project with face detection, which is something that is introduced new and it is more in, let's say, iOS more than in Android. So you're probably not going to use anything cross-platform for that. But in the business use case, let's say you want to create something from the accent, I can say you are from Bahrain. So you can use something like Talabat if you want to create something like Talabat. You will not need to use a native application for that. You can use a cross-platform framework for it. So Flutter would be really useful for that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, guys? I think we are good. So since we have Visual Studio. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Are the questions? Can we ask questions?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. First, thank you for your presentation. Second, this is Ahmed. My question is, Flutter is based, or we can use material design in Flutter, right?
Yes.
You don't think that we are limited to material design since we don't have access to other libraries or frameworks like in web development? And
okay, continue.
That's it.
Okay. So we're actually not limited to material design. We have also components in the Kubernetes, as I said, Kubernetes library. Let me just show you how they look like. I'm just going to. But the way that it's been introduced to us is that these components are also available. So as you can see, in nature of these components are really similar to what iOS looks like. So for example, here we have the element dialog, the Kubernetes button. So you're not limited only to the material design. However, it is the commonly used design within app developers. So Flutter had provided to us. And actually, I remember I mentioned the guy who was an artist who used Flutter to create a lot of arts. He didn't follow any of these, let's say, libraries or SDKs. He did that by creating his own library for his own self. And also, these designs are given to you as, let's say, as a way to make your life easier. So you don't need to create any components by your own from scratch. However, if you have any creative idea, you can do that with Flutter. You are not limited for creating or for using material or Kubernetes. You can do your own custom designs. And you can also use custom designs that are based on, let's say, a button in the Kubernetes button, for example, and you just want to create something crazy with it. So don't look at it as a limitations. Your sky is the limits, you can say, but it is more as a way for you to make development really quickly and faster.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi. If I created an app on Xcode, will Flutter allow me to create an Android version of this app, or?
This is a tricky question. So what you will need to do is that you will basically, if your app is, the UI of that app is created by Flutter, yes, you will be able to do that. But if the project is actually done, the whole project was done in native iOS, until now, I'm not aware of any way that you can actually switch to Flutter with that. It is more supported by Android, and it's actually logical because Android and Flutter are from the same parent company, and Apple are kind of in a different approach. They have a different approach, but currently I'm not aware of anything like this.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so someone is asking what is the theme that I'm using for Visual Studio Code. I actually don't know. Let me just try to search for it. Where is it in extensions? I think I haven't used Visual Studio Code for a long time, so I think it would be here.
You can check it by typing theme in the command, I think.
All right, thank you. I'm not sure which one is chosen here, but I think I have a lot of themes. Yeah, I think this one, material theme, ocean, high contracts. All right, so someone else have a question? All right, so at the moment, I think we have covered the most basic things in Flutter. And I want to mention that these links are also available for you if you want to try to attempt to create these kind of designs. And you can find them in my GitHub account. I will try to share with you the links now also. Okay, so we have these links for you guys if you want to go ahead and attempt creating these designs, and you can start with the starting project, which will contains the color code for this one, and also it will contain the picture that is going to be used. And you can, using the same widgets that we just explained today, you can create the whole design for this page. After that, you can challenge yourself and create this kind of design for this page. And if you are able to do that, and you have the code, the source code for this one also, if you are able to do that, it's only the matter of linking each button with the page, the second page, and then you will be able to have a simple application that can be used by and can be useful for you, and hopefully similar to your future ideas. And I think I have some spare time if you want, guys, for me to demonstrate anything within Visual Studio Code or Android Studio, or if you have any questions, feel free to open the mic and let me know.
Hi, sir. I wanted to ask if we actually wanted to try the application on our phone, on our physical phone. How could we do that?
Okay, so the first question is it Android or iOS?
Android, let's say.
Okay, so for Android, what you need to do is that you need to enable developers mode. To do that, you need first to go to your settings and search for the build number. And when you find it, click 5 times on it. It will prompt you that you are now a developer. You return back to your settings, and you can see a new additional, let's say, a field in the settings, or an option in the settings where it's called developer mode. You click on it, and then you will search for USB debugging. You enable it and just connect it to your laptop or PC, and it will show here as one of the lists. So I can show you now, I will connect my phone, or I can display my device on the screen. So once I connected my Galaxy S8 here, I can find it within the options that I can run it. For iOS, it's a little bit more complicated, however, it's easy. So first of all, if you want to write on iOS, you need to have a Mac, and you need to have Xcode installed there. Once you connected, you will need to provide some certifications and from a developer account, and then you will be able to run it on your iOS device. There are many tutorials on how to do that step by step. It will be hard for me to demonstrate it today because I'm running on a Windows machine. However,
is it for free?
You can create a developer account for free to run it on your application, on your physical device locally. However, if you want to publish an application, it's not for free.
And if I wanted to use it on Android, can it work with a Mac?
What exactly will work on Mac?
Like, I mean, if I created the project on a Mac, can I import it to, I mean, export it to the Android?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So currently, I use my Mac for my main development for Flutter because I can export it to both Android and iOS. And it's easier for us for the command line. However, Windows works just as fine. Whenever I want to publish, let's say I can finish all my work and test everything on my Windows device. And whenever I'm going to publish the application, I will just export the whole project to a USB or through GitHub and download it in my Mac. I'll run it again and run it on iPhone. And from there, I can publish it to the iOS store.
Okay, does anyone have any more questions?
Yes. For the, can you open slide 70, please?
70, yes.
For this application, you use the widget row to create the origami bird, camel, deer.
Yeah, this is not the best approach. However, I just use that so we can keep it within the knowledge. There is another widget called list view, which is going to give you and provide the list of, let's say, the birds here programmatically. However, I just use the row right now just to demonstrate that and a column for it.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. But you can search about list view and grid view. They are great widgets. They are a bit complex for a beginner, but they are not hard to learn. I want to mention also something. You can use .pod.dev. I think I mentioned it in the earlier of the project, of the session, where you can run Xcode, Flutter commands and Flutter widgets easily. If you are facing problems with Visual Studio Code or Android Studio, just to keep track and learn how to use Flutter. The limitation of this is just that you will not have a full project, or you won't be able to export it to Android or iOS at this case. And also you can't have, let's say, assets installed within a project or something like this. You will always have to display an image from a URL or something, or data from URLs. And I'm not sure if we can save it here actually. So yeah, so I don't think you can save this file, so you can just try and test with it. I would advise you to fully install Visual Studio Code or Android Studio for developing Flutter. All right, any other questions?
I have a question. So all our code is written in the main Dart page?
The main Dart file, yes.
All of our code is written there?
Yes, however, you can add different files. You shouldn't be limited to this one. For our example here, you have it all in one file. So let me try to show you how it would look. So for example, I have this one main widget, and I will just put whatever rest of this. Let me just put, where is it? So we have here two widgets, my app, and inside of it, my home page. So let me try to put my home page in a different file. So I will do here, right-click on the left folder, create a new file. I will call it, I can call it whatever I want. It's not going to be an issue. I will call it the same as the widget. My homepage.dart. So I can go here and take the whole code for my home page with the state. And I will have an error which requires me to import library, material library. Once I have it here, I will still have an error. This is what I'm telling you about. So if you have an error like this, you can click Alt Enter in Android Studio, and it will prompt you to import the library, my homepage.dart. Once you import that, everything works fine. Let's just run it to show you.
It's like React and component.
Yeah,
right?
it's React. Components in React are similar to widgets in Flutter. So yeah, you have it the same way exactly. So you are not limited to only main.dart, and you can create different files. However, you just need to import them, and with big projects, you will probably need to do that for sure, and to organize your code like screens and utils, for example, and stuff like that. All right, any other questions? You can ask me guys to do something here also if you want, if you have an idea. So let me try to do something. So as you can see here in the code, someone wanted to ask something?
Suppose we want to switch from this screen to another screen. Is it easy to do it now? Can you show it?
To switch between screens,
like a button that let us to switch to another.
Okay, it's not easy to be done. It's just going to need some time for us to organize it. I just want to demonstrate. You can contact me later. You can contact me later. I will share with you the code. Right now, I will show you something we can do really quickly for the app bar. So right now we can see it on the left side. So let's say I want to make it in the center. I will just write center title and give it true value. It will be on the center. I also explained about the leading option. Inside of it, let's say I want to add an icon. Inside of it, I can add icons. And you can see all the kind of icons are available for me from Flutter framework. And let's say I will go with back. And I like actually arrow back.ios. So let's use it. I will save the project. You can see them directly reflected in my application. You have also the actions here where, so as you can see, while I start writing actions, for example, the IDE prompts me to complete the sentence. So I don't need to memorize how the array looks in widget and Flutter. So I'll just click enter. It will give me the cursor directly inside of the array. And I can add, let's say, another icon, because we are still in the app bar. Inside of it, icons dot, let's say, an access alarm. You can see here, have an alarm here. So usually also, guys, you will find this debug panel. And to remove that, you will go to the material app, which is within your first, let's say, example project within my app widget, and just write the debug show check planner and make it false. It will be directly removed. And since we are returning back to the actions, we can add more than one action or more than one icon here. So let me just show you a different icon. Let's say AC unit. So we can see them directly reflected here. Also, let's look at the application without a scaffold. So let me just remove the scaffold for a minute, and let's try to add a text. And let's say hello So this is how your application will look like without a scaffold. So scaffold is what's organizing the whole screens, but you can also work without it. We can create, let's say, center. This is another widget that we didn't include today, but it's also useful while development, which will center everything inside of it and the center of the screen. So text, let's say, go again. All right, so you can see that you can play around with it, and you can see how you can put your ideas into Flutter. I think there's no more question. If there is, please raise them now.
Could you show us an example of a row widget? Like what does it look like?
Okay, sure. So let me just, I think I have it copied, yeah. Let me just return back what I had. So inside of the body, you can remove what's inside of here. Let's run it and see how it looks. All right, so we'll return back to what we used to have. So inside of the body, let's say, so we are in the body of the scaffold. We are using it to organize our stuff. Let's say I want to add a row here. So just find row. Inside of it, I will find children. Inside of children's, let's have one text message, text widget here. First item, and let's say multiple text widgets. Two, three, and let's save it. So this is how it looks like right now. And let's try to organize it more, main axis alignment, and right click also capital M, and let's make a space between all the items. So we have it here, or we can have different options like space around, or let's have them all organized in a space evenly manner. Yep. And for the cross-axis alignment, let's have them in the center, let's say. Right now, the widget is too small. Probably you won't notice anything without for the cross-axis alignment, but it will affect the vertical axis. So because it's not that big, I'm not sure. All right, does that satisfy you?
Yeah, that's good. Could
All
you
right.
also show us, what if we wanted to put like a box around each one of them, or like how do we stylize each element?
Okay, so let's say you want to put a box around them, right? So let's have a container and use container here, and let's have a text. This. All right. So we have a container on one of them, and let's have, for example, a color. For example, and want to have a width, for example, for it, and let's say, so we can containerize them this way. And let's change the text color also, so it can show right now. So we can add within text style, and within that we can add text style with the color option. And inside the color, we can add colors dot white. And this way we can have them in containerized. So basically, what I will do to demonstrate them all in containers. So yeah, this is something interesting. So if your design exceeded the limit for the screen, you are prompted with some sort of an error like this. What you will need to do is just give it some space, and it will be fixed. And right now it showed because the width is set to a specific number like 100. You can use some sort of percentage here. To do that, you can write media query dot of context dot size dot width. What this code or what this snippet of the code tells you is that it brings back the width of any device that the app is actually displaying on right now. So it will give you exactly the size of the width of the screen here. And you can multiply it by, let's say, 0.1 as 1% of the screen. So right now, the width of this widget is 1% of the screen. So this is a little bit advanced. I would say you can use it later on in your journey with Flutter. However, it's good to mention that and keep this in mind in the future. All right, any other questions?
Can I ask you?
Hi. The sound is a little bit low. Can you raise your voice? I can't hear you very well.
I wanted to ask if we want to list these first items under each other, not beside each other. Can we? And how?
A column.
Column, yeah. So I will just change, let's say, row here. We'll just change it to column. Yep, so it's on top of each other. Here we can also see the cross-axis alignment and main axis alignment. Let's say we will have it on end. So we can see that it has been changed here. So the column is within this limits, and the cross-axis alignment is affecting this component. You can see also start. So bring it to the start.
Can you show us an example for hyperlinks?
Hyperlinks. What do you mean by hyperlinks? Like a button that opens.
Like when you click on first item, it will redirect you to another page or a page on your browser.
Okay, I can give you a quick one, but this will be the last question, I think. We can, let's say, container. So here we have text. So for that, we will need to use material button. Material button. And a child, I will give it, let's say, a text. So right now we have a material button here. If you want to click on something, you need to have on press. So right now the button is actually clickable. So let me just give me a moment.
You're still on mute, so if you're speaking to us, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry for that. Okay, so what I was going to tell you that for opening a URL, for example, let's say an external URL, you will need to use something in the pub.div. You will need to use a package called URL launcher. So this is a little bit more advanced, and you will just need to include this in the pubspec.yaml and run flutter pub-get. And then after that, you will, there's an example of how to use the code. Within that, I want to mention that pub.div is the best website you can find for finding packages and extra functionalities for your Flutter project. What you can find here is, for example, share preferences or file-based authentication here. And let's say you want to find an extra functionality, let's say barcode scan. I was searching for that earlier. So you can find some packages created by other developers. Sometimes these developers are actually in the Flutter team. And you can find how you can implement it. And if it requires, sometimes it requires for you to open the actual Android project, the native project within your file and add some code. And just to set it up if it's a complex package. And then you have a full example on how to do it. So I think so, yeah. So inside of the text here, you can find the onPress, which is you can say anonymous function here, where you can add the kind or the type of functionality you need. For opening external files, as I said, to require some packages installing. So it's kind of a little bit advanced for this workshop today. I think we are good today, and hope you enjoyed, all of you. Have a good time doing this workshop. And I would like to thank Maria for organizing everything. It was a great organizing. The organization was really great. And you can follow me on social media if you have any problems. And thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you very much, Sayed. If you guys have any questions or you'd like to have more workshops about Flutter, more advanced workshops, let us know. Connect with us on social media, please, on DSC AUB, on Facebook and Instagram. And thank you for attending. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.